Live from America's heartland, this is the Daily Truth Report with your host, Noah Christopher.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Truth Report. And on screen is a good friend of ours returning back again at just the right time, Bo Polny. Welcome back to the show.
Noah, thanks for having me. And I think the best place to start here is biblical days are expected. I think we're about to see something go down.
Yeah, I think so too. And we are live here. We were supposed to be live about 30 minutes ago. You would not believe the trouble we had with email. It's just like emails wouldn't work. I kept trying to send Bo the email to get on the show here, and everything else in my internet's working. It's not like my internet's down. Bo's internet wasn't down, but we couldn't get emails back and forth. Then I went to Twitter, to X, and I tried to DM him the link. And I didn't even tell you this part, Bo, but I got 3 error messages from Twitter saying Twitter is over capacity. Try back later. So I tried every which way I could to get Bo this link. And so that's why we're 30 minutes late. I apologize for that. Please drop me a comment. At this rate, I wouldn't be surprised if we've got other technical problems. So please let me know if you're seeing this, hearing us okay. I want to make sure that we're connected before we jump right into this. So just shoot me a comment wherever you're watching. We're live on YouTube, we're live on Rumble, and we're live on Twitter X. So just let me know. So far, I'm not seeing anybody. So drop me a comment if you're seeing this okay, and maybe tell me what state you're watching from. Oh, there we go. First one just came in. Okay. So looks like maybe we've got some connections here. Hello to AC. Anybody else watching this? We probably lost a lot of people waiting for 30 minutes. So again, apologize for that. Error was on my end, but we are live. So we'll also take some questions along the way. If you have them, drop them in the chat, and I'll try and flash them up on the screen for Bo. It's always a real treat to have him here and get his time and be able to ask some questions directly. That's why I love doing these live. So one more housekeeping note, and then I'm going to turn it over to Bo. But it is, I always like to say what day it is, because when you have the man of time on the show, you got to be precise with those things. So it's April 8th, 2025. And I always like to do a quick little check-in here. It has been a wild couple of weeks for Bitcoin, cryptocurrency markets, gold and silver markets, stock markets, with everything with Treasury, with tariffs and everything else. So we're sitting at about $76,000 Bitcoin. Ethereum, pretty low, 1,400, and XRP has dipped below the $2 mark. It's at 183 right now. So for historical purposes, that's where we sit right now, but that's not where we're going to sit forever. We're going to talk about some big moves coming up, some really big moves for gold, silver, and crypto. And I don't know that we'll get there first, but where do we go first, Bo? We will get there eventually. Stick with us, because we're going to talk big things for crypto and for precious metals. But where do you want to start first, Bo?
Like an introduction would be this. We've done podcasts for quite a few years already. We've had some incredible fun in our podcasts. We can go back to 2022 November, where we talked about cryptocurrencies dropping in November. And then we find out as the FTX scandal, and the cycles preceded that and foretold that a month in advance. So we've watched the markets jump. We also watched. I think we did a podcast in November saying, watch November 5th or whatever the date was, or, Bitcoin probably going to jump 20 or 30,000 in a single couple of days. And it did exactly. So we've watched the price movement. And all of this comes down to one specific thing, and it's a scripture. And it's the love of money is the root of all evil. And these people that run the world, it's interesting. I was doing a little homework and, on the Titanic, and I'm sure you've looked into this as well too, Noah, but the Titanic itself, right? It sank in 1912. Now, this is important to understand the sequence of events, right? So the people that were on the Titanic, and again, as you know, I've done a little homework, and it's on Twitter. You can find this stuff. I put a little link to it on my Twitter account, as someone else was talking about it. But it's interesting because, see, there were people that were opposed to the Federal Reserve System, and ultimately that's what ended up happening. And now we have what's called a debt-based money system, or a enslavement system. Okay, so the financial system is an enslavement system because the people that create the money can create as much as they want of it to infinity. And the great part is, they've deceived humanity to have humanity believe that it's money. So the world believes that, when you reach in your pocket, you pull up paper notes. You have digits in your bank account. It's like the greatest fraud ever perpetuated on humanity, because the world believes that they've actually got money, but they don't have money. And actually, if you want to, that actually could be a good place to even start here. Is listen now to Trump. In a second, you can play that video, but this is fascinating, okay? Because Trump is now acknowledged, he doesn't realize what he's saying, but he's saying specific dates. And he basically stated that before the tariff, so we used to have tariffs, and we were such a plentiful nation, we didn't know what to do with all the money. This is really important. We didn't know what to do with all the money. And then lo and behold, in 1913, everything changed. And so he basically just says 1913, everything changed. But before you play the video, listen to this, okay? Guess what year the Federal Reserve was founded, Noah?
Oh, well, I don't have to guess. I know it's 1913.
Right, exactly. And then all these three-letter agencies immediately followed. But basically, so the Federal Reserve, all these three-letter agencies, it all started in 1913. And then there were people opposed to this new system out of Europe. And, and they basically went on the unsinkable ship a year before. And also JP Morgan had tickets to go onto that ship. And then at the last minute, he canceled, the family canceled. And lo and behold, what a coincidence. The people that were opposed to the Federal Reserve System just happened to be on the ship, and everybody else wasn't. And then 1 year later, the Federal Reserve System was enacted. So go ahead and play this video. And Trump is not making reference to the Federal Reserve. He's making reference to when all of it started.
Well, I'll take one issue with you on this, but I've seen this clip. I think it's really good. I think Trump knows exactly how bad the Federal Reserve is, and I think he's given this a wink and a nod when he says 1913. Oh, gee, I wonder what happened in 1913.
Yeah, well, and actually, I think you're right. No, I don't think you are 100% right on that. But Trump's being political here. He's just throwing out dates. But again, if you're wise, right, you always want to read between the lines, and that's you're 100%, you're 1,000% right, Noah. That is exactly what he's saying, because he knows what's going on.
Well, let's play it here. This is such a good clip. Here we go.
America is going to be very rich again, and it's going to happen very quickly. It's time for the United States to return to the system that made us richer and more powerful than ever before. The United States in 1870 to 1913, all tariffs, and that was the richest period in the history of the United States, relatively speaking. In other words, relatively. And they set up the Great Tariff Commission of 1887, and this commission had one function: what to do with all the money that we took in. It was so enormous that they had no idea. It was a blue ribbon committee. It was set up 1887, and what to do with all of the money that we had. And again, Teddy Roosevelt was a beneficiary, because when McKinley was killed, he took over this vast sum of money, and he did all of those national parks and all of the other things. And I'm not knocking him, but he was given a vast amount of money, and that was all made through tariffs. We had no income tax. The income tax came in 1913. As I said in my speech last week, instead of taxing our citizens to enrich foreign nations, we should be tariffing and taxing foreign nations to enrich our citizens. Does that make sense, right?
There we go.
Income tax. What's income tax, right? It's they're stealing your time. So if I go to work all day, so any individual who works all day, if you pay a 30% tax, you have to understand you're taking 30%, because tax is time. You're taking 30 because you're working per hour, right? So you're working, there's only so many hours in the day. So you're working. So if it's 30% of your day goes to pay the government. So now they created taxation in 1913. Federal Reserve Act. Like, how insane is this? Because this is all by design.
Yeah,
This is what this is. And so, and enslavement is what this is, because they want us, humanity, to be serfs. Okay. What are serfs? People that work for the government. You're going to have nothing and be happy.
Yep.
That was the plan. And it started in 1913. And,
Eat the bugs.
And they know that Rockefeller, these globalists know that if you, and evil knows, because they know evil knows humanity, right? How people think. If you can control 2 generations and control their thought process, by the 3rd generation, you can do whatever you want with them.
Yep. Well, Bo, I put this up on the screen. I was actually thinking of a different clip. It's very similar, but let me just play this one really quick, because he really gives this a wink and a nod in this one. Same topic, but a little bit different version of Trump here. Let me play this one for everybody.
1789 to 1913, we were a tariff-backed nation, and the United States was proportional.
Hang on a second. I got this all messed up here. There we go. All right. Let me get back into this.
1789 to 1913, we were a tariff-backed nation, and the United States was proportionately the wealthiest it has ever been. So wealthy, in fact, that in the 1880s, they established a commission to decide what they were going to do with the vast sums of money they were collecting. We were collecting so much money so fast, we didn't know what to do with it. Isn't that a nice problem to have? What do you think, Marco? Good problem? Marco would love that problem. But we don't have that problem anymore, but we're not going to have it very much longer, I will tell you. But they collected so much money, they actually formed a commission to determine what they were going to do with the money, who they were going to give it to, and how much. Then in 1913, for reasons unknown to mankind, they established the income tax so that citizens, rather than foreign countries, would start.
Okay, that was the part. For reasons unknown to mankind, they established the income tax in 1913. He knows exactly what they did with that on that ship with the Titanic, with the meeting at Jekyll Island. He knows the whole history. And Bo, I've been saying online for a while now. I think we had Jekyll Island, then we had Bretton Woods. I think we're about to have the Mar-a-Lago Accords, where President Trump rolls out a whole new financial system. What do you think about that?
Well, no, that's exactly what has to happen. Okay, so what has to happen and what will happen is a collapse of the Federal Reserve System. Okay, and if you want a time point for this, again, I'm just saying this is all based around the financial system, and the only way to take down Babylon is by the ankles. You got to take them out at the ankles, and you got to tear out the roots, because the love of money is the root of all evil. If a giant stands, right, you don't go for the head or the chest, you go for the ankles. You take them out of the ankles, and the whole thing comes down, right? And so you got to cripple the money system. And so they use the money system to build Babylon. They use this money system, Noah, to enslave the globe. Okay, so they used money that they create out of thin air. The world believes it's money. And so now the world, and then Babylon took this money globally. And now, they take we've seen pallets of money being shipped to different countries. So they've used this money system to buy and pay off everybody. And, this goes to the 7 hills, right? So every facet of humanity is controlled, from the media to schools, education, government, Hollywood, so you can just keep going. But those are the 7 hills. And that's why you have the term puppet masters. So they control everybody with money, either through blackmail or whatever means, but it's all the puppet master system. So there's people operating behind the shadows of what they portray on stage, because that's all it is. It's a stage. All the world's a stage. And so this money system, these people that behind the scenes have the ability to create as much of it as possible. The world believes it's money. And so they push this money globally. And so the only way to stop this is to collapse the financial system. I'm going to repeat that. But now when I say system, it's not the stock market, okay? Because people get confused with, with the economy, versus the stock market. They're two different animals, okay, but they're tied in. There's a similarity with them, but the economy specifically is like the global money system, which mean like, the US dollar. Other countries have their money. So that's based on, a nation's economy, but specifically the global money system is the US dollar, the federal, not federal, reserve. There are no reserves. Note, okay? And who controls the Federal Reserve note? Well, the bankers that are attached to what happened in 1913 and the Federal Reserve Act. Remember, they pushed that through at Christmas Eve at nighttime. With they won by, I think, a factor of 8, with like 28 senators out on vacation. So they also pushed it through at nighttime. What a coincidence, right? They pushed it through at nighttime, Christmas Eve. So this is the whole history behind it. And that same year, the movie comes out, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. What? And you got the creature from Jekyll Island. And so, and for what I've heard, is actually there were satanic things going on at that island. Specifically to enact this entire system. So in order to stop this, so long story, in order to stop this, there's only one thing that must happen, is a dethroning of the US dollar as a world reserve currency. So the dollar must be dethroned as a world reserve currency. It's got to lose its status as a world reserve currency. Oh, Bo, well, that's awesome. Oh, that's horrible, because it's going to be devastating to the US economy. Okay, but understand the economy is a fraud. It's based on a fraud. They create this money out of thin air. And so whatever happens to the economy, it's got to happen because the whole system is based on a lie. I'm going to repeat that. The whole system is based on a lie. The lie is money is nothing but a debt-based system. They detached it from gold. We talked about that over and over again with Nixon. Then the petrodollar contract, in 74, June 9th. And now we're at 50 years. And Saudis, we've talked about this before in the podcast, Saudis have refused to re-sign that petrodollar contract, okay? No one's talking about it on mainstream media, but there's no more petrodollar. So for 50 years, we've had the petrodollar. Saudis refused to sign the petrodollar contract on June 9th, 2024, last year. They never re-signed it. So now there's no more, even our dollar's not even backed by oil anymore. It's backed by literally nothing but faith and confidence in this corrupt system of Babylon. So in order to stop this, the dollar is going to be dethroned. If I had to say a time point for it, I'm going to say it's going to start. You can use capital words, start, S-T-A-R-T, right after Passover. So I would expect the US dollar to begin to plunge or collapse and crash after Passover, which would end. Passover ends on the 20th. So on or about the 21st, the US dollar is going to begin to plunge in value, and it's going to be a really big drop on the US dollar. And that's going to be very awesome for a lot of things that you and I have been speaking about financially. But then there's going to be a moment in time that the globalists are going to go in gangbusters with everything they got to try to stop this from happening. And we're going to see a sudden reversal of all the markets as well, too. So there's a very huge, probably the biggest price swings in history are about to happen in the next few months here. It's going to be incredible. And the stage is set for Passover. And so Passover triggers the biggest financial event and start of things financially across the entire globe. We're not going to get out of this month, based on what I'm seeing. We are not going to get out of April until we see the greatest financial shift begin in human history. And the word is also start or begin. And this is going to set the stage on fire for them freaking out because they're about to lose control. And the kingdom, God's kingdom, is about to start to shift and manifest on this earth. And the reason this is so important, because unless the dollar is dethroned as the world reserve currency, they're going to continue to do this for the next 100, 200 years. No, they're not going to stop. Okay. And so this is not a battle for man. God's going to intervene on this. because he needs to stop what their plans are. If we don't have a biblical intervention, Noah, like we talked about earlier, this is going to turn into nothing what their plans were for the one world system, for us being serfs on this world and working for them and having nothing and being happy. That's their plan. Okay. But God, that's the best part about this. But God, and God knew this. There's scriptures that foretell what he's about to do. So we're going to talk about all of that in today's podcast. But this is a moment in time we're stepping into that will shake humanity to the core. And scripturally, scripturally, there's one verse, I'll get to that in a minute, but it says, oh, how terrible that day will be. And that's coming. There's a day coming that's going to shake this world.
Yeah, well, Bo, that's let me just for people listening who, we talk about some of these really big concepts like, the Federal Reserve and a debt-based system and all this stuff. And, I think sometimes that can be intimidating to people, but just to make it really simple, when you think about the Federal Reserve, they have, and that's why they fought so hard to get this system in here and had to kill all the bankers that opposed it and the Congress people that opposed it and push it in over Christmas Eve, because listen to this job description. They get to print up money out of thin air and loan it to the American people at 2% interest. Now, that has always been what I have always said. I just ran that through ChatGPT to say, is that accurate? Fact check this. And it said, well, two small changes. They don't really loan it to the people. They loan it to the banks that loan it to the people. So, okay, there's a clarification. And number two, they said, well, it's not really 2%. It's more like 5% now. So just to understand why these people, everything that Bo just described, why they want so badly to keep this. So when Bo says it's a debt-based system, they imagine that you could print up any amount of money you wanted and just loan it to someone at 5% interest. That's a pretty good job.
Right. And please stay on that thought, because I want you to expand further. But a debt is something that you owe versus an asset is something that you can hold, right? So gold and silver is an asset. It's not a debt. But if you create something out of thin air and have somebody pay it back to you, that's a debt. So the system is a debt-based system. It's based on debt. It's based on something that never existed, but yet people are paying it back.
Yeah, it's debt from its very creation. And so, this idea that, we're going to pay off the national debt or we're going to somehow pay things back, when 5% is created out of thin air at the very inception, there's no math that allows you to ever pay that back. You just get more and more and more in debt. And that's why these people get richer and richer and richer. And then they use the money for blackmail. They use the money to do all these things that Bo's told us about all over the year. So all over the years coming on the show. So when Bo talks about taking this system down, it's taking down this corrupt system where they can just print money out of thin air, loan it, make 5% interest on it year after year. Einstein famously or reportedly said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Well, imagine they've been doing this since 1913 and compounding 5% interest on trillions of dollars that they print up out of thin air. That's the system that Bo says needs to go away.
Right. That's a Babylonian system. But now look at what Noah just said. Okay. So the bank, so they create the money out of thin air. Check fraud number one. Okay. Because if they create it out of thin air, it's got no value. So they create it out of thin air. And then they, number two, lend it out at 5% to the banks. That's number two. So now they're creating a fraud and then sticking an interest rate, double fraud. So it's a double fraud system. So now that they're creating something out of thin air, making you, so they never gave you value. Let's look at it that way. They create something out of thin air and then lend it to you. That's not value. So if I gave you a piece of gold, I'm giving you value, or a piece of silver, I'm giving you value. Or I go work for you for an afternoon, I'm giving you value, okay? They give you no value. They give you nothing. It was created out of thin air, so they're giving you no value. You just believe it is. That's the crazy part. You just believe they're giving you value. So when they give you $100, someone gives you 100. So when the Fed creates $100 to give the bank $1 million, people believe the bank gave them $1 million. but they got nothing of value. And then they stick an interest rate on it. And now this is the best part. So the bank gets it for 5%, Noah, right? And then go check your credit card statement out. They're charging you 25 to 29% interest on money that was just created out of thin air. Talk about a fraud.
Yep.
You know, and then, if it's a mortgage, they're charging you what? 7-8%. So they're getting it for 5 and charging you whatever 2, 3, 4 basis, 5 points over the Fed, over that rate. So the banks are lending you something. They're the middleman making money that was given to them and that was created out of thin air by the Fed. This is the world we live in. We live in a total fraud.
Well, I think that for people who, don't have a deep understanding of finance or these systems, I think that probably gives you a really good understanding of what Bo's talking about when he talks about these systems and why they have to go away. That it's just got to go. And now imagine having something backed by gold and silver, like Bo talks about, something that has value, something that's on the asset side of the ledger. What has Trump been talking about these past 3 months? How about we establish a strategic investment fund for the United States? How about we get some assets for the people? Everything is he is systematically rolling in a new system, and it's not. I've been very public about this. I don't really buy into the whole NISARA and GISARA thing that all your debt's just going to be wiped out and the bank's going to send you a big check. I think that's bogus. I don't think that's real. But I do think there's a new system coming in.
Yeah, well, let me if I can take a minute here, expand upon what you just said. I'm glad you brought that up. So I don't know about the term NISARA, GISARA. I don't know anything about that. Okay, so for me to tell you, hey, I know that, no. But I do know this. In Scripture, it says, "Thou shalt consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all of its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you." Guess what Scripture that is? It's Leviticus 25. What a coincidence. We're in the year 25. Okay, so let me define a jubilee. It means debt destruction. But what it specifically is saying is all those contracts that you believe to be true are soon to be discovered to be total frauds. And so fraud vitiates everything it touches. So it's not the bank's going to do you a favor by hey, you got a mortgage, you're going to wipe out your mortgage. No, there won't be a bank. I'm going to repeat that. The bank's going to not do you a favor. Hey, let's wipe out, these people's debts. No, the bank that was holding the mortgage is no more. They're gone. There's no one to collect on these debts because the debts they're considered frauds, but the banks that hold them are gone. Gone, as in gone. Let's just repeat that. Gone, as in gone. So there will be no one to collect on these debts, and that will therefore cause the freedom from bondage. The notes you have that were created out of thin air on your car payments, student loans. What ends up happening with the dollar plunge collapse is going to cause a bond market to break. When the bond market breaks, the banks blow up.
Yep, I think that's right.
Okay. So when the banks blow up, not all the banks, but all these banks that were involved in a fraud, okay? And the ones that were not, or minimally, I believe, are going to be left standing. A lot of the credit unions, a lot of smaller banks will be left standing, and then they will be then stepping into the new financial system where Trump is going to restore, like Noah just stated. Trump is going to restate he's going to bring in a new financial system. I know in my heart it's going to be a treasury-based system, but basically it's going to be backed by gold. And Trump is going to return the United States back to the gold standard. And the United States will end up being the most powerful nation in the world. And like he described when we talked about these tariffs, when these tariffs all end up playing out, we're going to have so much money coming at us, back like to what he stated, from 18, whatever it was, to 1913. We're not going to know what to do with all the money. That's how much money is going to come into the United States. And we're going to have the most powerful currency in the world because it'll be backed by gold and silver and the strongest military force in the world. That is going to be the United States under Trump, because Trump is a trumpet who sounds in the return of Christ. I'm not describing, the 1,000-year reign. I'm describing a time point, a season, multiple year seasons or many years of four into the future here yet, that we're going to have immense prosperity and blessing in the United States before evil comes back. But again, they're never going to come back into the United States. They're going to flee like you can never imagine. And on top of that, scripturally, most of these evil ones are about to be removed. And this prophecy is gone, as in gone.
Well, there we go. I can't wait to see this new system come into place. And if you can't see the writing on the wall right now that Trump's rolling this in, I can't help you. But I do want to say, because I've been doing this a long time, and I get your emails and I read your comments, and I think most of you get it. But I will occasionally get people that write me and say, well, my uncle told me that Nassar is going to wipe out all my debts, so I'm just going to go out and get the biggest mortgage I can. I'm going to max out my credit cards because it's all going to be wiped out tomorrow. Don't do that, people. I mean, I think we have very good things coming. I think it's a very bright future, but don't do something stupid like that. Don't go run up a lot of debt because you think it's all going to get wiped out next week. It's going to be a beautiful new system coming in, but don't get hooked on all the nonsense. We don't need the nonsense. There's enough real stuff that's happening that's very, very good.
Well, and if you want real, just go to the asset side, right? What's the asset side of finance? Gold and silver, right? And it's scriptural. Gold and silver mine, saith the Lord. Silver and the golden mine, saith the Lord. Haggai 2, verse 8. So you want to hold an asset? Hold gold and silver. Period. Okay. Cryptocurrencies. Again, people say, oh, that's of the devil. No, it's not. God uses all things for his glory. So gold and silver and cryptocurrencies, again, not all of them. Most are going to go to zero because they're junk, okay? But the good cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum, all these good coins are going to go gangbusters. It's going to be really exciting, okay? Why? Because God uses some things for his glory? No. All things for his glory. So when the glory comes upon the earth, which is what we're about to see here, he's going to rip away all of their plans are going to blow up in their face, okay? Their plans will blow up in their face because God's got a bigger plan. That's the best part, right? My God has got a bigger plan than Lucifer because my God has been planning this for thousands of years, and he knows the future, and evil does not.
Yep, that's right.
How awesome is that?
That's right.
So that takes to the presentation. These aren't political times, they're biblical. Slide 2 is just the point I wanted to make about the number 7 is understanding time. Okay, so if you look at this, number 7, just from what does it mean? Number 7 means completion. What does that mean? Well, how many days are in the week? 7.
Yep, 7.
Okay, so that's the point. There was a 6-day war, and then God rested on it. So basically, it's a day of rest, but it's an end, and then it starts all over again. But that's why you have 7 days of a week. Period. It also perfection, spiritual wholeness, God's work, divine order. But basically, the number 7 defines time. And so then the next slide just gives you a big the multi-thousand-year understanding of time, because we've all heard about the millennial reign, right? So, well, hopefully many people have, but the 1,000 years of peace on the earth, right? So God wrote the end from the beginning. So the 1,000, and when you read the scripturally, I think let me give you the scripture now. When it's Psalms 90, 3 through 4, it says a day is but 1,000 years. So if you take the 1,000 and remove the zeros, you got 1. A day is but 1,000 years. If you count backwards, because God wrote the end from the beginning, so it'd be 2,000 years from Christ's return to his birth, 2,000, and from his birth to creation, 4,000. So there is the very simple understanding of 7,000 years of time and why 7 ties in with all of it. And I was at a conference in Vienna, and I got ticket number 124. And since that date, the Lord revealed so much to me about the number 1 to 4. There's the number 4. There's so much about that number, and it's not the number itself. It's the revelation behind the number that freaks me out. And actually, I took it off this slide deck here, but there was like 2 months ago, I think, Noah, you sent me a video about the 4-2-1 loop. And so I have it on another slide, but the 4-2-1 loop is fascinating as all heck, because what it is, it's the number, it's the most complicated number in mathematics, and yet the most simplest equation in mathematics. And the number is very simple. It's 3x plus 1. And so what it says is any whole number, meaning like any number, any possibility. So you want to look at that as any possibility, you plug into 3x plus 1. Any number from 1 onwards, any number you plug into 3x plus 1 ends up where? In a 4-2-1 loop. Over and over and over. It will never end. It'll be a 4-2-1 loop forever. And so what is 3x plus 1? It's simple. 3 is a trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, multiplied by any equation, any factors, meaning that no matter what Satan tries, no matter what they try to do, anything you plug into that equation, anything you plug in, so no matter whatever Satan tries, 3x. So anything Satan tries, 3 times n, or x, plus 1 is humanity, us, will always end up at 4-2-1 loop and ultimately ending at 1. Perfection. So no matter what, so the equation is basically very simple. It's a 3x, you can Google it, 3x plus, it's a 4-2-1 loop. And specifically, that is the most complicated equation in mathematics, period. No one wants to touch it because you can't answer the question, because how does it end up in a 4-2-1 loop? But ultimately what it's saying is no matter what Satan tries, no matter whatever Satan's plans are, no matter what he does, the equation states very clearly the Trinity plus humanity and any random variable will always end up at 1, period. How awesome is that? So Noah, thank you for sending me that. Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I was just looking it back up here as you were talking to kind of refresh my memory. If people want to know more about it, it's called the 3x plus 1 phenomenon, or it's also called I don't know how to say this, but the Collatz conjecture, Collatz, the Collatz conjecture. And basically these are the rules of the game. Just like Bo said, you take any number you want. If it's an even number, you divide by 2. If it's an odd number, you multiply by 3 and add 1. So we can just do one here live. Let's just say we start with 6, okay? So if we start with 6, that's even. We're going to divide by 2. We're going to get to 3. 3 is odd. So we're going to do 3 times 3 is 9 plus 1 is 10. Okay, 10's even. So we're going to divide by 2, go down to 5. 5's odd. So we do 5 times 3. That's 15 plus 1 is 16. Well, 16's even. We go from 16 down to 8. 8 down to 4, 4 down to 2, and 2 down to 1. And you will always, no matter what number you start with, like Bo just said, you can take any number in the world. You will always eventually, by applying these 2 rules, if it's even, divide by 2. If it's odd, 3x plus 1, it will always end in 4, 2, 1, and then the game's over. Yep. And I just typed it into ChatGPT. They said, no matter what positive number you start with, it always eventually reaches the 4-2-1 loop. No one knows why this happens. I mean, it's so cool.
I'll tell you why. It's one word called God. How crazy is it? So, in other words, what the Lord revealed to me is actually a mathematical equation. They call it conjecture, and it's a 4-2-1 equation that always ends up at 1. And if you add up 4-2-1 the loop, what do you get? 7. This is insane. And what is specifically saying any whole integer? In other words, so an integer,
any positive,
anything variable. So no matter what Satan plans, anything, this equation states mathematically God wins.
Yeah, it's so cool to see stuff like that hardwired into math itself.
And so that takes us to the next chart. So you got the 1, 2, 4.
I put this comment on the screen, Bo. Congrats to Mr. Mann, who says Mr. Mann is ordering a lot of McCafes, and he got the number 421 last week. So good job, buddy. Get some McFlurries next time.
It's funny.
All right,
so
what's
I just
green next?
So in other words, so mathematically, this ties into everything because. So I'm glad we talked about the 421 loop, the conjecture, because this ties into, like, let me just, what you're looking at right there. Now, if 4 represents, think about this. If 4 represents the 4th month, what would that be, Noah?
That'd be April. We're in April.
That's right. Well, if you add up 2 and a 1, what would that be?
June and July.
No. 2 and 1 in terms of dates. That'd be the 21st.
Oh,
so
okay.
You're looking at, well, actually, July is a very interesting time, but I never thought about that because that would be actually, because July would therefore be the Kim Clement prophecy about strange July. Hey, God just revealed something to you. So that would be 6. Yeah, so you have June and July, which is very fascinating, but that would be a tie-in with strange July, fulfilling the Kim Clement prophecy. But specifically, what you're looking at is April 21 is a very important time point, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, great.
So next slide, back to, so now how does this tie in with, okay, well, how can we use that number? Well, next slide, how about we apply it to the Declaration of Independence?
Which is now hanging in the Oval Office, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Isn't that funny? So what is it? So the Declaration is specifically, it's a covenant made, man that makes a covenant with God, and God makes a covenant with man. So when you Google ChatGPT, you can do it yourself. It says, what's a biblical covenant? And it's God's promise and agreement are unchangeable, reflecting God's own unchanging nature and character. I got that off ChatGPT yesterday.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. So God's covenant is actually, what's an immutable covenant? Because Kim Clement had a prophecy about the covenant is immutable. So by definition, that's what immutable means. It's God's unchanging nature and character. So what was the covenant? It said very specifically that the United States is dedicated to who? God.
Mm-hmm.
So we, the people, dedicated the United States to God. And because we did that, God dedicated to protect the United States. That was it. We got on our knees. The founding fathers got on their knees. They dedicated America to God. So now, how stupid are these people that are going against the United States and trying to do what they're doing? They're going against God, who's got a covenant with this nation. They're trying to destroy the United States. That's a covenant nation. Like, how stupid is that if you just look at Israel? Israel fell, but yet in 1948, it was resurrected, fulfilling what? The Ezekiel prophecy about the rebirthing of the dry bones. And on that date, guess who was 700 days old, Noah? Trump.
Okay.
On the day the United States, on the day Israel was resurrected, Trump was 700 days old from the day of his birth. Page 24. Like, this is crazy because what I'm describing is mathematically impossible, and yet we're watching it happen. So you can see God in the details. So Trump, these are divine calculations, and how Trump is not God. He's God's appointed and anointed. I'm going to repeat that. Trump is God's appointed and anointed, and that's why they can't touch him. So look at Israel's proclaimed a state. 700 days later, he's born. Then, from the day he's born to May 14th, from the day he's born to his first day in office, he's 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old.
I remember this from the
Remember that one,
first
right?
term. Yeah.
But then this is okay. Well, that was okay. So he's 700 days at Israel's, when the dry bones begin to resurrect. Okay, so that's just a coincidence. His first day in office, 70 years, 7 months, 7 days. That's just a coincidence. Okay, now this is insanity because Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the day he endorsed Trump. And why is it important? Because when the endorsement happened, he brought the left, the Democrats, and the Republicans together as one to do what? To ensure and secure a victory landslide that will be too big to cheat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Trump said, right? Because God had Robert F. Kennedy be born on January 17th, 1954, and to the day of the endorsement, you count backwards to his birthday, and it was 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'm just trying to illustrate that God is the perfect mathematician, and he lays out and he writes the end from the beginning. So he arranged for Trump's birthday to be on a certain day. He arranged for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be born on a certain day. Okay. And you go to the next page, he arranged from the day Trump was born, it was 70 years, it was 700 days and 70 years. So it's 2 sevens. To the day Trump opens the embassy in Jerusalem. And this is where it gets exciting. So you've got 2 sevens. What's missing, Noah? A third 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 7 more years from when Trump opens the embassy in Jerusalem on May 14th, 2018, you add 7 years and you get this May 14th, 2025. Everybody write down May 14th, 2025. I do not know what's going to happen. But I tell you, this is a very important day because this completes the 7 sequence from the day of Trump's birth and directly relating to Israel. This is important. So what happens, we're all going to find out together. But if you go to the next slide, this is rather interesting because we're going to talk in a minute about Resurrection Sunday. Noah, guess what day Resurrection Sunday is? It's April 20th.
Okay.
Who rose from the dead on Resurrection Sunday? Jesus.
Okay. I thought it was a trick question.
You're looking for a bigger answer. No. So we go back thousands of years, and the greatest miracle in history was the resurrection of Christ, who conquered evil. So this was the greatest miracle because the miracle was the birth, and then the greater miracle was the resurrection because now he becomes a second Adam, and he fixes everything Adam and Eve screwed up. Okay, so now he gave us the blood. We now have the blood of Jesus. We have the body of Christ. So because of what he did on the third day, he resurrected. It was a new beginning for humanity, was it not?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So please, everybody who's listening, write down the date, April 20th, 2025. Why? Because it's Resurrection Sunday, and it technically marks what? A new beginning. Okay? Now, if you read about the Exodus, from the day Israel departed Egypt, they walked in the wilderness, well, they walked to the Red Sea. It took them 18 days. There's a time in yellow right there. Those who want, you can click that yellow link right there, but it gives you the entire timeline. It took them 18 days to get to the Red Sea. They got to the Red Sea. They camped there for an additional 7 days, and therefore they crossed the Red Sea on day 25. Day 25 is the day they crossed, and then God, the Father, closed the Red Sea on Pharaoh and his army on day 25. From Resurrection Sunday, you add 25 days. Guess what day you get, Noah? May 14th. Go back one slide. What a coincidence. May 14th is 7 years from when Trump opens a U.S. embassy in Jerusalem. It's 700 days plus 7 years plus additional 7 years from Trump's birth. So slide 27, 2 down, basically are screaming that the May 14th time window is incredibly important. And interestingly enough, 100 years plus 8, 8 means new beginning. The day before that is the 13th, and that was the miracle at Fatima that happened exactly at May 13th. And I find it interesting. There's that song, the most popular song I think ever downloaded song. What is it? Stairway to Heaven. And we're in spring right now. And so back to what's supposed to happen here on page 21. Page 21 talks specifically about the month of April. And we are in spring. So Stairway to Heaven, yeah, I know it's, if you play backwards, it's the demonic song and blah, blah, blah. But from what I gather, there's some prophecy in this because it basically states very clearly it's a spring cleaning for the May Queen. And then where do we see the May Queen in scriptures? Where do we see the May Queen in scripture? Go to slide 8.
Well, now don't get me in trouble again.
No,
with the
because
Catholics,
this is
Bo.
important. Slide 8. No, this is biblical. So that slide 8 is in Revelation. Okay. So this is Revelation 12.
There it is.
There it is. Okay. So what I'm trying to show you is God, and then God himself wrote Revelation 12 through John on Patmos. Revelation 12. So I'm just telling you, the spring cleaning, Virgo, this is Virgo, which will be representative in terms of Jesus' mother Mary giving birth. But guess what she's going to give birth to, Noah? Not to Jesus, because Mary gave birth to Jesus already. Now Virgo, Revelation 12 sign, guess what she gives birth to? The church. Who's the church? Haggai 2 verse 9. The latter temple. The latter temple will be greater than the former. I'm giving you all the scriptures. So the latter house will be greater than the former. So who's the former? The 12 apostles. So the apostles were the former house. We're about to witness the latter house be birthed. And so it's interesting when you go look at the timeline on page 32. What did we have happen? We had on specifically the September 27th, the Star of Jacob, 40 weeks from the Star of Jacob is the 4th of July. So the 4th of July marks a time point actually it's the 3rd of July would end the 248th years. Remember, we'll talk about 248 in a second. So the 4th of July ends the year 248, and then the golden age is birthed. So Trump, when you talk to the golden age, it actually is birthed on the 4th of July. The 3rd of July technically, and the 4th of July is the first day. And then the next 2 slides, so in other words, next slide is 33. So the year 248, and we didn't actually talk about this, but you take the number 124, Noah, you multiply it by 2, and there's 248. So that's God hiding the calculations in a mystery. So no one could ever figure out biblical calculations because they were always hidden in a mystery. And the answer was you take the 124 and you multiply it by 2, and you get 248. So it's the 421 loop times 2. You get 248 years. And that was 2024. So from the Declaration of Independence, 248 years is 2024. Okay, but it's 2025. No, understand. The year 248 started on the 4th of July. So when does the year 248 end? On the 3rd of July this year, 2025. And the next cycle of time, the birth begins on the 4th of July. And circumcision would be representative in Hebrew culture, because God gave them that culture. The understanding would be circumcision, which would be covenant. So the final slide here is on page 34. So from the 3rd, you add 8 days. 8 days is when circumcision is done on the 8th day. That's July 11th, 2025. I don't know what all this means. We're going to watch this go down together. But the Kim Clement prophecy is very clear about strange July. So something wild is going on. And when you read, go back to Revelation 12 sign, what it's said is when the woman gives birth to the child, evil is going to try to kill the child, just like they did with what? Jesus when he was born. Pay attention to that. The moment Jesus was born, they try to kill Jesus. The moment with the birth of Moses, look what happened. Birth of Moses, they try to kill Moses when he was born. So this is the birth of the birth of a spirit of God. This is the most powerful thing that we've been waiting for centuries. In this case, 2,000 years. And so, strange July, I just can tell you, because the birth is, they're going to try to come after that child, which is the church. So it's going to be wild this summer. And then Kim Clement, remember, talks about the 2 E's, earthquakes and eruptions. So all this is going down. And then that steps us into the final slide here on page 35. And this is the fulfillment of the seasons prophecy about summer will be the mediator, right? So summer, July will be the mediator between spring, so spring cleaning. The spring cleaning, which leads us into summer, the mediator. And so the fall can do its work in America. And remember, the Star of Jacob is birthed when? On the 4th of July. The Star of Jacob is spoken about in Jeremiah 30. And Jeremiah 30, verse 16, if you look right there in the bottom right corner, it says, this is the hunters become the hunted. Like, how cool is this, right? It says, all who devour you shall be devoured. All of your foes, every one of them shall go into captivity. And those who plundered you, you shall now plunder. And all who prey upon you, I will make your prey. The tables are about to be flipped. The world as we know it is not going to make it to the end of the year 2025 without the greatest, biggest spiritual, financial, biblical revival shift in human history. And it all ties in with a time point that's about to manifest on this earth, Noah. And it's really, if you want to put the clock up here, go to page 12, please. And we'll give you the time window on how I believe this is going to play out. And then we'll talk about, the financial side of it and how to prepare financially for those interested. Remember when you and I did podcasts a few years ago, we talked about oil going in. Remember, we said there's going to be a very important date because it was 1,260 days from when Trump got elected, and he got elected November 8th, 2016, 1,260 days. Put it to April 20th. And actually, no, this was the event that triggered you to reach out to me. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I believe this was the event that caused you to reach out to me because I did a podcast with Greg Hunter and USA Watchdog. And ever since then, you and I have been friends. We've been doing podcasts together. But I believe this was the event. Correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe expand upon that.
No, that's a tremendous memory. That's exactly what happened. I watched it live on Greg Hunter's show, and he always does such great work. Really appreciate you, Greg. And you know, you said that ahead of time. You said, watch this date. We did watch the date, and then we watched oil go to negative dollars for the first time in history.
38.
Yeah.
So it was crazy because think about that as from a psychological perspective. Okay, so no, maybe I want to hear what you have to say about this because so we got the U.S. petrodollar, so it's backed by Saudi's oil and the dollar system. So so we give Saudi's military protection, and in terms they agree to buy oil in only the U.S. dollar. So that was what was going on for 50 years, and so. The thing that backs the U.S. dollar, the Federal Reserve note, the petrodollar, oil side of it traded on that day negative $38 a barrel. So they would actually pay you $38 to take a barrel of oil. Explain that to me and how you would explain that, Noah.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen that before in history, and no, it's kind of like negative interest rates. Like, okay, I'm going to pay you to hold my money, and so yeah, it's absolutely wild. I wonder if we're not going to see it again with all the stuff Trump's doing in energy. I think it'd be fascinating to see that happen again in his second term, but who knows?
Yeah, and so I would couple this with probably most likely this never happened ever before, but more importantly, this is probably the greatest anomaly in financial history. Because remember this date, and remember from that podcast that we did as well too, Noah, what we said was what the Lord revealed to me. And I don't hear like full sentences. I just heard immediately was Noah's Ark cycle. I'm like, okay, well, so then I applied 40 days to that date, and whatever, from the 21st, 40 days, you get the Pentecost and the George Floyd riots. And anybody can Google what happened the day after the George Floyd riots. Paris, all of Europe's rioting, global riots all started the day after George Floyd. Think about that. 40 days, 40 nights.
Oh, yeah.
Then the other calculation, and you know this one as well too, because this is, I'm stating this for a fact because these things happen. You can second witness what I'm saying, but I want to show you that God's in the details. That's the point of this. And so the water, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but the water kept rising to the 150th day. This is in scripture. And so 150 days from the 20th, or 21st particularly, was September 18th, 2020. Again, something was supposed to happen just like at 40 days. I don't know what it was. And next thing you know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies in the evening. And then the next thing I said was, don't be surprised if Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned here shortly. And that happened. But expand upon that, because these are factual things that happened. And we talked about that actually.
Yeah, I mean, you're going back in time on these. We lived it. I saw it all firsthand, and all three of those dates you had gone on live on the air and said watch these dates, and then they played out. I remember the September date, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg one, and of course you always say I don't know what's going to happen on this date, but you know this date's flashing red on all my calculations, and then we find out what the event's going to be. And I remember that day, it was pretty late in the evening. And there's that famous, it's become a meme now of President Trump getting off his plane, getting off Air Force One in September of 2020. This would be right before the election. And it's dark outside. So it was very late in the day. And it's now that famous meme where he says, "Oh, you're telling me for the first time. I haven't heard that before." And then they turned that into a meme. But yeah, the whole day went by with that. Well, maybe Bo missed this one. Nothing happened. And then sure enough, late that night, we found out that RBG was dead.
And so glory to God, because he revealed to me, just do the math. So I did the math. So now that takes me to the math that he revealed to me. And I want to reveal it here to the viewers. I just want to show, because this is beautiful that I'm with you here, because you can second witness what already happened in history. And this is the latest that God revealed to me. So go to the next slide here, Noah, because I think you're going to, really appreciate this. So Carolyn Dennis does a video, and God reveals through Carolyn Dennis that we are in the 59th minute. So we're at 11:50. He goes, we're at 11:59 for the great shaking. I'm like, the only way this could be potentially, no, there's only one way this could be 11:59. There's only one way. If you take an hour clock, because I'm sorry, we were in November. So this was like 2.5-ish weeks ago. So it was like the third week of November, and God spoke through Carolyn. He goes, we're at 11:59 on the clock. And when God says like numbers, that my radar just goes off. Well, that's just how I operate, right? And immediately I heard from the Holy Spirit. He goes, replace the word minute with month. I'm like, that's it. That's got to be it. There's no other possibility, because when God says we're at 11:59, that would mean that it would represent minute would mean month. There's 60 minutes in an hour. So if we're the 59th minute or 59th month from oil going to negative $38 a barrel, what month would we be in? The month before April. So simple, right? So we'd be in March 2025. Period. And then just like a couple days ago, she got another prophecy. And so then the Lord revealed that to me. I did a podcast with her. I put the slide together. I revealed this, in her podcast, and I showed it on her podcast so people know. So there's a video on my channel, on her channel. I showed this clock, but then she got a prophecy just a couple days ago. And now this confirms what I heard and what I'm saying, because now the most recent prophecy that came in the month of April. This is interesting, Noah. You know what the words God used? He says, we're in less than a minute now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So for less than a minute means we're in the midnight hour. So when we're in the 60th minute, we're in April, and we're less than a minute means that we're in days now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we're literally in days of this going down.
Less than 30 days.
Less than 30 days. Yes, thank you. So we're in less than 30 days for this event to go down. And so if you look from oil going to negative $38 a barrel, that was on April 20th, 2020. If you add 60 months, you get to April 20th, 2025.
Yes, that's that same date again. You've already brought that up once.
Same day, only 5 years later. And then that takes us to the next slide, which is Joel 2:31. It talks about the great and terrible day of the Lord. Well, what it says is the sun will turn dark. We had an eclipse on the 29th of March. There will be a blood moon. The moon will turn to blood. We had that on Purim, March 13th. So the two prerequisites for Joel 2:31 have been satisfied because God doesn't lie. So both things have already happened. All that's missing now is the great and terrible day of the Lord. And if you want to pop on that video, because it talks about there's one day coming that a golden key will be released. And this will tie into what we're going to finish up here on finances. Because again, how does God take out the financials? How does God take out Babylon? This evil, corrupt system. He takes it out at the ankles. God takes them down and he rips out the root. When you rip out a root, guess what you see? Everything that's buried. If you cut a tree down, it could, or a branch, it could grow back. But if you tear it out at the roots, you destroy the Federal Reserve System. You cause it to lose its status as the world reserve currency. You expose what's in the roots. You tear out the roots. You take it out at the ankles. Now what's happened is they lose their strength and power. And a door opens that hasn't been opened for centuries, for generations. And a door is locked with a key that can never unlock that door. A door is about to be closed. The door is what evil has been doing upon humanity. This door is about to be closed. And when this door closes, no one will ever be able to open this door again. And I believe the key that unlocks a treasure chest, that same key is going to lock these plans that these ones have. All the stuff begins to get exposed, and we will never be able to go back in time. We will look back at this April, particularly April 20th into the 21st, as a greatest time point in history where it'll be everything up to this date and then everything after this date. And again, coincidentally, it's 4/21.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've got two massive dates written on my paper here that I've been taking notes with: April 20th into the 21st, and then May 14th, both in 2025. So, well, Bo, I hate to do this, but I have about 1 minute left. Otherwise, I'm going to have kids left at school and abandoned. So I have to get running. But people are going to be really mad at me if I don't get your opinion on crypto. We've had so many ups and downs with these tariff things. Can you give me a 60 seconds on what you see coming for crypto? And then I'll just say this: if anybody wants more detail, you can get as much detail as you want. Bo goes into incredible detail in his newsletter. It's awesome. I get it. He just did a new update last night. You go to gold2020forecast.com and Bo's going to get you 50% off if you're watching this show. So exclusively for people that watch this show, Daily Truth Report, type in WLT49. That's going to cut it down by 50%. Everything else Bo does is free, but that's the one thing he does kind of as his livelihood. So if you want that, if you want the more detailed info, go ahead and get that at Gold 2020 Forecast. At the top of the screen, I've got the code put up there. But Bo, give us a 60 seconds on gold, silver, and crypto. What are we looking at? And then the people are just going to have to get the rest from your report.
The financial system that we understand and we've used for centuries, and this is since 1913. It's going to get the greatest shock in human history. This is about to go down in April. Precious metals, God's money, gold and silver and gold are going to just go crazy, and they're going to just run vertical. Tied in with that is going to be cryptocurrencies, the good ones, Bitcoin and many of these wonderful, great coins that God's going to use for his glory and rip away the plans of what evil had. So the central bank digital currency, the CBDC, all that's going to blow up in their face. So fear not on that. Whether you like it or not, you will be transacting here starting and by end of this year, early next year, with your phones, and you will be buying things because the Federal Reserve System is about to blow up. Okay. And so the way you transact will change forever. So learn about cryptocurrencies. It's good to have these really good coins. So very important to have some of these great coins. And what's about to happen is an incredible, in my reports, the Lord finally revealed to me that, the time point of when this is about to go. So we've got the time point of when this is about to blow. It's going to be incredible what's about to happen. It's going to be biblical on the price explosion that they've been trying to prevent. Everything they're trying to prevent is about to blow up in their face, and we're going to get numbers that are going to be incredible. I will say on this explosion, shortly thereafter, a little while later, I can't give away the dates on these things, but there will be a time point where evil is going to try to step in and literally try to smash and bring these prices down. But again, because the golden key is released by God, this is God's key, the key of David. The door of their control is at an end.
All right. Well, there it is, everybody.
And the door to a new kingdom, a financial kingdom, is about to be birthed. And all of it is here. We're not going to get out of April before this thing goes down.
All right. Gold, silver, crypto, Bitcoin, XRP. Bo is saying you might want to have some of those. I can't give you personalized financial advice, but you can get Bo's newsletter if you want it, gold2020forecast.com. And if you need help even getting started, Bo also has the easycryptoschool.com. Both are awesome. Both have the same code. Anybody listening to this interview, the code does expire, but if you're listening to this live, go in there, type in code WLT49, going to save you 50% off of either the easycryptoschool.com or the newsletter at Gold 2020 Forecast. I got to run. Bo, thank you for being here.
God bless you, Noah. Thanks for having me.
It's always a lot of fun. Thanks everybody else for being with us live, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye.